Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Exorcist The Beginning, starring Stellan Skarsgård, Isabella Scorupco, David Bradley, James D'Arcy, Ben Cross, and Ralph Brown, directed by Rennie Harlan. Now, I haven't seen this movie, but I have seen the ending. So we'll see how, if it's as familiar as I remember it going. But I think I remember the ending kind of well. But let's see if the movie is just as bad as that ending. Let's just find out. Let's get into it. The year is 1949 when we set in Cairo, Egypt, and meet a former priest, now an archaeologist, named Lancaster Mirren, who I'm going to call Mirren for the rest of the show, and played by Stellan Skarsgård, sitting in a restaurant and meets a British officer named Major Granville, and it's making the same moves as the first movie, which is when they see a demonic-looking fossil, and people get scared. And how many more times are they going to try that trick in this series, as it got real old real fast? Mirren meets Father Francis, played by James D'Arcy, who will assist him in the mission assigned to Mirren after all these years since he left the church, which I've seen this plot before, as it's not original. Mirren gets the deserted land in Egypt, and Father Francis is Kuma by the car and meets up with, let me see if I'm saying the name right, Similia? I don't know if I said that right. Played by Ben Cross, and Sarah, who's a doctor and played by Isabella Scorupco, enter the show. And these characters, with an exception of Mirren, are absolutely worthless in this movie. While we meet with Emekwi and his sons Joseph and James coming in, and we're getting introduced to these characters right away, but at the same time, they're completely worthless, with an exception of Mirren. Mirren finds something that is 1,500 years old as they dig near hyenas, and the cinematography in this movie is absolutely ugly. And this is an ugly looking movie that feels very dry. Jeffries gives Sarah a necklace of St. Joseph and almost throws some shit at Joseph and Mirren, saving his life. And Sarah gets him out of there, and Mirren gets inside a tube. And remind me, other than the fact that this before the first Exorcist movie, what the fuck is the plot of this movie? As I feel the script is so far a mess in a terrible way, as the writing in this is wrong. Mirren visits Sarah and has a word with her about what he learned today, as he, well, as her father, whom I don't know who it is, but I just don't care for any of this, as I'm bored out of my mind, and as I'm 25 minutes into the movie, and it's not giving me a reason to like it at all. Mirren thinks of what happened to him in World War II, as he feels guilty because he let a soldier kill a little girl at the age of 8 years old, and unfortunately, I just don't care at all. Joseph and James fight over a knife while hyenas come out of the blue and kill a monkey, and I felt so bad for the monkey, while Joseph watches James die and take him away from James, as James was bullying Joseph around. And honestly, the way the scene was shot was absolutely unacceptable. As it was completely fucking dark, and I can't believe I can't feel bad for James because he was picking on his little brother to begin with. But I did feel bad for the monkey who got killed by the fucking hyena. Mirren sees a prisoner stab himself all over as well as his neck, and Father Giannetti comes in and introduced himself to Mirren. And the actor playing Father Giannetti is David Bradley, who played Mr. Filch in Harry Potter. He asks Mirren to perform an exorcism as he's no longer a priest, which was made explicitly clear from the very first scene on. And we move on to nighttime, and we see a hyena entering a home while Mirren is working, which turns out to be a dream, which is something I personally hate. Just fucking hate. And Jeffries wakes Sarah up, and Joseph comes in and tells Jeffries he's coming for him. And Joseph goes back to sleep until Mirren wakes him up and sees Sarah and sits with her and eventually briefly kiss as the bed moves, and they have no chemistry at all, which is really sad for a movie that is really a mess, and I'm hating right out of the bat. No wonder I fell asleep the first time I saw the movie. Joseph is shaking like he is possessed, by the devil, and I get the impression at this point he is possessed by the motherfucking devil, as it is so obvious it wasn't funny. Marion is searching for something as he sees bugs flying all over him while a woman gives birth to a baby with maggots all over her, what the scene was quite disturbing and horrible for me to watch. Jeffries comes to a place drunk and comes up to some poison as Marion comes back, and Sarah hears things that, and the light suddenly turns on, and Sarah says there is something evil present. And she tells Marion, I'm starting to check out of this movie as I wanted to turn the damn thing off right out now. But I'm not pulling another screamers off of this pile of garbage. Jeffries is dead. How? I don't know, and I don't give a shit anymore. And here's about this devil from the first movie named Pazuzu. And I don't care for the origin of Pazuzu while Marion digs and Imiqui wants Joseph killed for killing James as the hyenas did it. And at this point, I'm angry with this fucking movie while it's pulling bullshit after bullshit after bullshit. And I was done with the fucking movie at this point on, and I don't care what happens in the middle of this fucking movie as I'm checked out after an hour in. And I'm like an hour and 10 minutes into this god-awful film. Father Francis confesses on why Marion is there to begin with, as the devil Pazuzu is here with them. And I just don't motherfucking care. Imiqui is killed and Marion is ordered out of there, and a sandstorm is coming, and nobody is letting Marion, Father Francis, Sarah, and Joseph out of the area. And I just want this movie to end, as I'm bored out of my mind. Marion goes out to find them in the dark, while Father Francis is performing an exorcism, while we see Sarah is possessed, and how? I don't know, as this movie never tells us, and I don't give a shit. Possessed Sarah coax up with Father Francis, and kills him, and while Imiqui is killed and a war comes while Marion goes after Sarah, and he finds her, and please God, make this movie stop. Just make it end. Marion finds Joseph and Sarah possessed by Pazuzu, as Marion finally confesses himself as a priest, and does his best to exorcist the demon. And is this when the movie kicks into gear? I had to wait an hour and a half for this shit in a movie called The Exorcist, because I just don't care, as this series can go to hell despite I have one more until the new movie, and I hope this new movie doesn't exist. And I hope this movie doesn't exist after the new movie. I'll just say that much. Joseph falls in a tomb, and Marion looks for him while he prays, but he finds Sarah and Pazuzu, and Pazuzu makes Sarah tongue slimy and makes Marion briefly hump her, and she just jumps out and crawls like a spider and gets Joseph to pray by reading a book. Marion eventually gets Pazuzu out of Sarah by praying and casting him out of her, and she wakes up and is not possessed anymore by Pazuzu, and she starts to bleed from the back of her head, and she dies, and Joseph is out of there and meets with someone and goes off as Father Marion now, and I could care less for this climax. This is the worst version, and there's another version of this movie out that I'm going to review next time, so get ready. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 1.3 out of 10. This is an ugly looking movie, as the cinematography looks absolutely dry, while I don't like the way this movie was shot, and the script is a mess in a terrible way, and the writing is wrong. The characters are absolutely worthless, with an exception of Marion, as I don't like any of them, including Marion, which is a real shame for this movie having him as the protagonist of this movie. And this movie gives no good reason to like at all whatsoever, which is a real fucking problem for me in the get-go. I checked out of the movie after an hour into it, and as this is by far the worst in the franchise, and I didn't want to pull another screamers off, but at the end of the day, I wish I did, as this is a strong non-recommendation for this prequel, and now I'm scared for the new movie at this point. But I've got one more to go before I get there, and I never want to watch this movie ever again, unless they decide to make more Exorcist movies, which, oh, God help me. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I'm going to be back with another take of this story called Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist. And until then, I'm the devil. Now kindly untie these chains.